Open those two positions up. Or you don't just don't fight for it. Well, that's what I'm saying. We just, for me, the best thing is just since the money goes to the park, they have to figure out how to spend it.
Okay.
We're going to see.
We'll see.
You're still here, that's good. You better stay here.
Yeah.
You get the room.
Sit down. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll probably, July's great. Let's get through the, this, budget process. This,
Okay, it's 2 minutes until
next week, and then after the 4th. Gotcha. Anytime after the 4th.
I'm talking about back there. Remember last time?
Yes, and we had to let them speak.
What do you mean?
Because it was, yes,
Just
until 6.
to get it out of the way, to get it out of the way, okay, all right. Probably a good move. Where are you? Hey. I'm all for it.
Have you had a chance to look at the, and I know you probably haven't had the media permit or the media ordinance?
I don't really have too much of an issue with the ordinance itself. I think it's our application, and I think it's the way that
And talk to people too. Exactly. And I'm glad that's why, get that out the way.
Okay. Well, you just tell me what.
there's gonna be, there was something, I don't think we need to add a way to file it.
We want them, ideally. And you did it.
If you were 10 days.
Commissioner zoning public hearing. It is Thursday, June 22nd at approximately 6 p.m. Please silence all cell phones and all other electronic devices. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Gwen Flowers Taylor of District 1 to deliver the invocation and Commissioner Rita Johnson from District 3 to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
If you'll join me, please. Father, we come to you this evening in prayerful thanksgiving for all that you have given us, for allowing us to wake up today to even be able to come to this meeting this evening. We ask you to bless those that made it here tonight, those who are not here, but we also ask you to put your hands on the commissioners on this board so that we can use your discernment to make the best decisions for this community. These things we ask in Jesus' name, amen. Amen. If you would please face the flag, say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to amend the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the agenda if I may. I would like to put the number 1 under new business, and move it up to the number 1 under public hearings. And that's the first reading and the adoption of the 2024 budget ordinance. And the second move I would like to make, I would like to move the contract the contract with C.W. Matthews or Contracting Incorporated in the amount of $7,397,700 for the 2023 T-Splosh resurfacing phase number 2, and I'd like to move that to the number 4 under new business.
All right, I have a motion to amend the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion is carried. Item number D. For those of you that are here for the first time, what you're seeing on the screen over there is exactly the same thing that we see in front of us, so that there's no, we're seeing something and you're not seeing it. It's totally transparent to be able to do that. You should have got an agenda at the back of the room. At this time, I'd like to move to item number D, presentation of financial statement. Consider approval of financial statements for the 11 months ending May 31st, 2023. Ms. Garrison, welcome.
To answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Garrison? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the financial report, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Garrison, we appreciate it. Item E, public hearing. Persons desiring to speak must sign up for their appropriate application. When called, speakers must state their name, address, and direct all comments to the board only. Speakers will be allocated 3 minutes to speak on their chosen topics as they relate to matters being concerned by the Board of Commissioners on this agenda. No questions will be asked by any of the commissioners during citizen comments. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. Common courtesy and civility are expected at all times during the meeting. Dr. Ledbetter.
First up this evening is Michael Middlebrooks. If you would, please step forward and state your name and your address for the record, please.
Thank you for letting me come in tonight. My name's Michael Middlebrooks. I live at 1108 Maple Drive in Griffin. I'm here on behalf of the budget that's proposed, and I went to town hall a couple weeks ago about the proposal for the possible closure of the the trash collection centers, which is I understand is being discussed. Let me start by saying I see the budget. I went through it back there. I went through it online the best I could. I believe, based on what I see, going along with what everybody is obviously somewhat disgruntled about in the county and the city, the tax assessments that are coming in, the increase in taxes that are coming in are basically gonna cover the expansive budget that is on the table. Given the inflation and the impact and the daily cost of living for the average citizen, median income, low income, I don't care if it's a high income, at the end of the day, cost of living is out of control, and a tax increase there to go along with a budget increase is not what's best for the county. Now, are there things that the county needs to spend money on? I'm sure there are. Is pickleball and swimming pools a priority? Not to me. Not to most of the people I talk to. I think that the county should spend some money personally on education to the citizens, particularly senior citizens, because I live amongst quite a few of them on Maple Drive. You will be shocked if you went down Maple Drive and went through all the exemption processes and whatnot of each address of how many people over the age of 65 that own their homes, that haven't filed for a homestead exemption, and haven't applied for the reduction in school tax. And it's not because they wouldn't do it, they don't know they can. And I'm educating as best I can as one individual that works a full-time job, but I'm blown away by it. And to me, that's the government's responsibility, is to educate the public, whether it be with town halls at the senior center, whether it be with town halls with the general community, to let them know what their options are to reduce their cost of living in the county. I love this county. I moved here from Henry County several years ago. Unfortunately left for a little while.
Thank you,
But I
sir.
moved back.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Middlebrooks. Gary Peters, if you would step forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Gary Peters, 442 Tallulah Drive.
Welcome, Gary.
I've tried to find a lot of stuff on the internet about this budget and everything. Of course, it's hard because nothing's been out. But a few things I want to point out. First of all, this property tax windfall that y'all are going to be getting next year is probably in excess of at least 24%, which is going to put about $8.5 million into your budget, into the bank. Now, I've heard from some of the people that, you know, with FEMA, they're gonna pay you $10 million, you've got $3 million that you have to pay. Well, if you take the $8.6 million, pay out the 3, you still got $5 million that's going back in the bank account. I know it's gonna take time to get your money, but you can't spend it now because you don't have it. Looking at 2022 to 2023, and that's all I've got. 2022, you ended up with a $12 million surplus, according to the internet. I may be wrong, but this is what I'm finding. Your expenses for 2022 to 2023, your revenue went up $13.8 million. Your expenses went up $25.9 million. Wow. According to that, you spent every dime you have. Now, I know that I read it in the meetings, and the comment was, we're not going to get a good auditor's report this year. Well, you know, that's probably right, because you have no surplus. You know, I checked Fayetteville County, Henry County, they have surpluses. We have nothing. If we happen to have another catastrophe, we are going to be in a world of hurt. We've got to start putting some money away. And the last thing is, you base on the 2023 budget, and I haven't seen your financials or whatever. Every 1% decrease in the expenses would save $1 million. 1%. Think about that. I think it's time that you hauled in the belt a little bit and said, hey, we've got to back off a little bit. We're not the government. We can't print money. Wish we could, but we can't do it. But we're just going to have to put things off till once we get the $10 million in, we're going to be sitting in pretty good shape. But until that, we've got to back off and start to try to build our cash flow. We can't just go day to day to day. We've got to.
Thank you,
build
Mr.
it.
Peters. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Peters.
All right, new item number 1. Oh, sir, I'm sorry.
That was it, yes, sir.
Okay. Thought I'd cut somebody off, thank you. Item number 1, consider approval of the first reading adoption of the FY 2024 budget ordinance. Dr. Ledbetter?
I've made multiple presentations of our budget over the last month, and I will be more than happy to take any questions that the board may have regarding the proposed budget.
How big is our proposed budget?
Total is $121 million, and that includes the general fund, the water fund, fire district tax fund, the 911 fund, and then the other fund.
And that's an increase of how much last year, percentage-wise?
It is 10.46% increase.
This is a time for questions.
I don't know if you feel like it or not, but just kind of just bullet points as far as, what this increase basically is, without going into too much, because you've done enough of it, but just kind of.
Absolutely, I'll be more than happy to, thank you. So as we walk through the budget for this year and the departments worked through their request and then our recommendation, we have roughly $4.56 million worth of increase, which is a 6.6% increase overall to our cost of goods and services for this year, and a 2% increase for pay for our employees. That accounts for the $6.61 million worth of increase to the budget for this year for our general fund. It's a very modest amount of money that is increased based on the hyperinflation that we have been hearing from all of those who have attended our town halls. The same level of inflation that we're experiencing at home is the same level of inflation that we're experiencing in the goods and services that we're having to pay for. The majority of the money that we've seen for cost of goods and services include increases in our gas cost, water, electricity, sewer, stormwater, and the maintenance requirements that we have on the number of assets that we have across our county. There are no new services being offered, and there is no additional personnel with the exception of the replacement of one of our senior staff who is taking advantage of retirement, and we're sorry to see her go, but it does require us to bring one person on in the interim to do the transition from one individual to another.
How much money in our general fund, since this was asked earlier, how much money in our general fund is allocated towards swimming pools?
In the current budget, there is zero money allocated for the swimming pool.
Or pickleball,
I'm sorry,
or pickleball,
that's correct.
okay.
Okay, so all of the money that's going to finish the aquatic center comes from that SPLOST?
That is correct.
And that is a state required, once that vote was passed, we now have to build and complete that aquatic center, right?
That is correct. I cannot use those funds for general fund money for any M&O or for any general fund expenditure.
And there's also no position for, or no budget line for new positions or maintenance or operations of that in
That's
this budget?
correct.
Zero.
There is zero money allocated currently in the budget for the aquatic center.
And the 121 million, I don't know, I was going to make this one point. That includes the recycling centers staying as it is without any closures, without anything. That is actually included in there. So that is nothing said that we've taken money out or done anything with this recycling centers. That is what it is with the service that we have maintained today.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. All services that are currently being delivered to Spalding County is funded through this budget.
Thank you.
Earlier this month, maybe end of last month, someone had that question online, hey, you guys are closing the collection centers, and I assured her, no ma'am, we are definitely not doing that. It would require a vote of the commissioners, and I don't think that I've missed a meeting and missed that vote. I haven't missed a meeting, right? We're not closing those centers. Y'all didn't vote without me, all right? That never came up. It never made an agenda.
Never
to
voted at
close-
town hall meetings either.
It
We
was,
never voted
we
there.
never contemplated up here closing, okay, just putting that to rest. I know a lot of people came and said, no, we were told. You were told wrong. People online, when I told them that, didn't believe me. No, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, like, I think I would remember if we made that change. I don't think we made that change. So I'm glad that we didn't. What else?
Is our budget line for the road still in this budget, or did we take it out? I never forgot. I totally
It's
forgot about it.
The line item for the road is still in the budget. We did not take that out. We have a considerable number of requirements to make sure that we maintain our roads, specifically our dirt roads, and some of the projects that are desperately needed to take care of potholes or challenges with the roads cracking in areas where we do not have those roads listed on the T-Splost resurfacing program for this year.
And that is the new budget item we started last year, right? The one I'm talking about, like $1
This
million.
has been an ongoing line
Okay.
item.
Okay.
We increased it last year.
Yeah,
We have.
We increased it last year, but
Last year's the first year it was in the budget.
Yes,
last year was?
yes,
Last year's the first year
Yes.
that it was in the budget.
yes.
Before that, it was all under L.
mean, it's
Jenna
doing
agrees,
match.
last year was the first year it was in the budget.
SPOS, we did it with SPOS funds to be able to do LMIG and doing stuff like that.
So-
It's right at $1 million.
Yeah, it's like 800.
I appreciate all the work that Steve has done on the budget. And generally speaking, I understand it and I comprehend it. But I still do think that there are some areas that we need to look at in terms of looking out for our employees. Every city around us has recently given 10, 12% salary increase. We can't expect people to stay here if we're not, we're talking about a 1%, 2% cost of living increase. I have a concern about that. I would like to have some things in the budget moved around. I mean, I have some specific things that, comments. I think that it's important that we have money for roads. I think we all made a pledge to do that. But if we're collecting $12 million a year for transportation, maybe in this year's budget, it doesn't need to be $1 million. That's the first thing. What would I do with any money that was saved from that? I would look at trying to increase the cost of living increase for our employees. We have funded the Development Authority, which they do good things and we want them to do good things. But the Development Authority needs land. There is no way that will ever happen where we can assist them unless sometime down the road there's a SPLOST. That is the only way. But in the meantime, if their fund balance is more than ours, we don't need to be giving them money. So what would I do with the money from them? I try to give our people that work here an increase in their salary because we are way behind. There's other areas that I see would be beneficial to us in terms of what we're looking at. But I don't know that we haven't really just trimmed everything. The gentleman that came up and talked about us being $8.5 million ahead, nobody showed me those numbers. So I'm just a little hesitant about people throwing numbers out because I can do that too, and maybe people think I'm an authority, but yeah, you don't know for sure unless you see it where it is. So if that were the case, I could look at this completely different. But because of the situation that we're in now, we don't have the leisure to hope that that happens. Because there is an expectation that we're going to have to do the things that we've been doing in the past. So generally, I'm okay with the number. I just think that some things need to be moved around so that they make a bigger impact. Collection centers, I wasn't even here when they voted for that, but my understanding in reading the documents is that there should have been a recycling center. Since I've been here, we've never recycled. We have picked up trash and we have thrown away bulk items. So I have a concern when people say to me, we voted for this in the SPLOST, and you're right. If we're gonna recycle, then that's what should happen there. It just turned into the collection center. Now, maybe it's been that way since some people were born, but that's not what that place is. It's supposed to be for recycling. Nobody's really concerned about that. But what I can assure you is that in all the places that I've ever lived, I had to pay to have my household garbage removed. So the people in Spalding County have had a luxury that most cities in the country don't have. It costs to get rid of the trash that you make in your house. So if people are not willing to pay that fee, but still feel like they pay taxes to do that, that's not one of those things in OCGA that we're required to do. So, I mean, I'm not saying I want to see the centers cut down. I think what was proposed is going to be zero neutral for us in terms of someone doing roadside pickup or backdoor pickup. And if the recycling centers continue to be open every day for bulk items, why do we need to pay for that if it can pay for itself, for the services? I live in the city of Griffin, and garbage is just one of the expenses that we have relating to trash and stuff. So that's just my opinion. I think there's some places in our budget that we can back some money out. But I'm very, very concerned that if we don't have what we need for roads, or if we can't keep the people that are working on the roads here because they can go and work at the city of Griffin for $10,000 a year more, it's not gonna do us any good. The conversation that we've all been kind of bantering back, and obviously I think Steve says that we've got some misinformation, was that we thought we had 100 positions that were unfilled here in the county. And so the idea is that why would we budget for positions that we don't have? But apparently that is not correct.
That is not correct.
So that's another one of those things about the $8.5 million. So we are actually short
Roughly-
50 people.
Roughly 50, yes. ma'am.
Roughly 50 people.
And that includes both full-time and part-time. So, to get
And-
into a little bit deeper analysis under the FTEs, we would be between 45, maybe 40 people short total.
When I look at that list and I see that the jail is short 7 people, and I see that the fire department is short 14 people, that's already half of 50. There's nothing that we can do with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we'll be lucky if that's the problem that we have, it's that we can hire 25 people over the next year, based on what we've done over the last 5. So, I mean, you know, am I okay with the budget the way that it's written? In total, yes, but not individually. Some things I think are need to be moved.
May I also say something, kind of piggyback on Commissioner Flash Taylor? You know, we did these town hall meetings because we wanted to kind of get out in front of this and talk about the budget, to be honest and to be upfront with what we had and what we were working with. It's unfortunate that there have been some misinformation that have been given pretty much, you know, within house. I want to say, whether it be within the recycling centers or the numbers, you know, from the 100 employees missing employees, should I say, that's all come from within, and it's it's unfortunate, because, you know, our goal is to provide you all with the accurate information and to kind of let you know exactly where we are right now as a government and why we do what we do to make sure that we run accordingly. So, recycling centers and things like that did not have to come out. And I'm sure it put a hardship on your families thinking that, you know, you've hearing this information and that, you know, we may or may not do that is just unfortunate. So, just kind of want to throw that out there. But that's all I have to say about that.
Commissioner Dutton?
So, again, I like it when we are up here agreeing. And that's where we are a lot tonight. There are some points that I don't agree with. Specifically, I'll start with the Development Authority, of course. The Development Authority pays us back in spades. In spades. We're trying to hold our housing growth to a very high standard, and which rightfully so slows down that growth. We're not just building willy-nilly like Hampton and Locust Grove are. You see these just like going up everywhere. We're really trying to make this growth in a very positive way. And yet the needs in the, of the county keep going up. We have some, what I'm sure they think are well-intentioned folks in Washington DC that are driving the price up quite a bit, 11% year over. And that's a lot. So, at the same time, our development authority, with just a little bit of money in compared to what we spend everywhere else, is bringing in hotels and growth. You know, they've filled up the you know, our 4th industrial park, and now have worked with private developers to bring in even more private growth and continue that even without land, even without having to do a SPLOST project.
Yeah.
So they're trucking right along. As one of the members of that board, I hear the monthly report, and it's like, wow, who's coming to town? Really? Oh, wow, they're also going to build here? And it's somebody new almost every month. And to put the brakes on that would really be just tragic. That said, you're right, we are short people. I was out at the jail yesterday. We have some of the best staff running, and with all due respect, one of the worst facilities. And it's not our sheriff's fault, but we have an amazing staff who really care. I talked to some of my clients that are current residents out there, and they, there's no polite way to say it. And every time they go, you know, it's the building's a little tough, but everybody's nice. They make sure that there's nothing crazy happening. Like they're taking care of it. You know, we really do have great staff people. There's what's our current population out there? 500, close to 500.
We're I don't know today exactly.
But-
We're averaging between 450 and 500 a day.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective, we book in over 6,000 people a year, and we serve over 1 million meals out there every year.
Million meals. They're looking at 450 to 500 people in there a day. You know how many guards they had on yesterday? 4. Like that, we can't keep that up. We can't keep that up. The county kind of has there's sort of two types of spending that we have. We have required spending. OCGA says that we have to fund our sheriff's department, we have to fund our elections department, we have to fund the court. And then there's not required spending, optional spending. We don't have to have parks. We don't have to have senior centers. We're not required to. People want these things. I'm not saying we should, cut it all, but when we look at what we're required to spend and what we're not required to spend, we can't and shouldn't cut back on the required spending. Our fire stations have 2 firemen on duty at any time in any one fire station. 2. If somebody gets sick, they close the fire station. That's the situation we're in. That's how to the bone we have cut this. And we have the positions allocated, but compared to all of our surrounding counties, it's hard to get these people to come in and work for us.
Yeah, because we can't pay them.
Now, again, we're I looked at the numbers tonight, we're sort of in the middle of our 25 counties around us. Obviously, Atlanta and Gwinnett pay more, right? And surprisingly, Greene County pays more, But, we pay more than Pike, we pay more than Lamar, we pay more than, so, we are sort of in the average as far as starting. But, so if we cut in our required spending because of the very bad situation that we're in, we should cut very, very small, and we should make these temporary. That said, I agree with Commissioner Flowers-Taylor and Commissioner Johnson. There are cuts to be made, and I look at it in the optional spending, not to really just put too fine a point on it or really direct our county manager in any specific way. I'm not trying to call out any department or say they're not doing well, but our public works department, the people that really go out there and work and take care of the roads and whatnot, there's 28 people there. Our solid waste has 33, right? The people that take care of these 6 collection centers, there's 33 employees there. All part-time. Leisure services has 33 employees. 33 employees. All right, the tax commissioner's office only has 15. The clerk of court only has 14. Magistrate court only has 13. Like, you're almost triple the size of these other departments, and it's all discretionary. So, yeah, I agree that there is, but at the same time, you know, I think it would be a real shame to cut out, you know, to focus on one thing and say, well, all the cuts come from here. You know, like, could we bring our budget lower if we said, well, let's close the senior center? Yeah, but that would be a terrible thing to do in Spalding County. We have an awesome senior center and a lot of people that depend on it. Like, would we spend less money if we ended Meals on Wheels? Yeah, that would be a terrible thing to do. We shouldn't close Meals on Wheels, you know what I mean? It'd be like closing the rec department's baseball and football programs. Like, that would that help us bring our budget in line? Yeah, but we shouldn't do those things. But at the same time, I think there are cuts to be made here. I sent you guys an email with the Rand Paul budget amendment, you know, like cutting everybody by a penny, cutting everybody by 1%. And, you know, we've got a $100 million budget, $120 million budget. That's $1.2 million for one penny. And again, I look at our sort of two columns of money, things that we have to spend, that we should spend, things that we're required to spend, you know, the jail, the court, you know, sheriff's department. And then there's the overwhelming majority of these line items on here are optional stuff. So I think our county manager, our finance department, y'all have just done a fantastic job with what we've given you. I mean, again, same thing with our sheriff. Just a fantastic job with the budget that we've given you. In a real tough situation, people in the past made choices that have set us where we are today, and now we're trying to overcome that. Again, not throwing shade on them, but, you know, here we are. And can we do better? Yeah, I think there's always room to improve. But are we perfect? No, but are we doing pretty great? I think our budget is pretty fantastic where it is. Could it be better? Yeah. Would I love to see even more cuts? Yeah, but you held a knife to my throat and said, well, which thing are you cutting? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you a specific thing that I would say, well, this thing's got to go. So, you know.
A really brilliant idea. We will probably all get run out of town.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
I mean, you know, we need to look at, the things that we're required to fund by OCGA. But when you do that, you miss a bunch of people up. Because yes, we're required to fund the sheriff's department, but we're only required to fund the courthouse and the jail. We don't have to do special ops and CID. But we need those things.
Right.
So we can't not fund that. So yeah, it's really difficult to start looking at this and say, let's fund the things that are OCGA first, because in several departments, there's a bunch of stuff that we provide for people that's good for the quality of life, but it's not required. So, I mean, it makes this even harder
Right.
to decipher. I got nothing against the Development Authority. I'm looking for money. And for the very same reasons you said, I'm concerned that the people that we have here will leave because people need money. They need more money. And they're not getting it from us. So that's what I'm looking for in this budget, if there were some changes, how we can figure out that. The other thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, was I'm intrigued by this, the comment that the gentleman made about what the tax assessor's potential increase to us will be. I know we won't know this until the digest is done in September, in which case we can't do anything about a millage rate until we know what that is.
That's correct.
I'm praying that it's that, because that means we don't have to go all the way out. We don't have to increase the taxes. But, yeah, we don't know. And I think we have to budget for what we think we know we're gonna do, what the expectation is from the community for us to do. And then if we have an opportunity, once the digest comes in, or once the digest will show us what taxes we'll actually get. I can assure anybody sitting out here that I won't be voting to raise the taxes if we can generate that kind of money from the digest. I mean, I think that's what everybody's saying that, but at the end of the day, this budget is just about approving the budget. It's not about raising the millage rate. And I just want to say for the record, I'm pissed off too because my assessment went up.
Yeah.
And I personally think my house is definitely no better than it was. It's the same raggedy house I had last year in January. But apparently somebody, so understand, if I had the opportunity to do something about that, I wouldn't have let that happen to me either. So, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, again, for the record, nobody in this room controls the valuation of houses. People have called me for the last 2 weeks, hey, the value of my house went up. Well, appeal it. Well, why did you do that? I didn't do anything. We are constitutionally separated by law. I can't tell him not to. I can't tell them to do it better or less or slower or faster. I have to just shrug. I can't do anything about it.
Same thing with the school.
And it's the same thing with the school. It's the same thing with the city. I'm pleased that there's 14 people here to speak. I'm glad that there's folks that are involved. People have called and said, hey, I want a copy of the budget. That gives me a lot of hope. There was nobody at the city's meeting at all to speak for the $140 million budget that they have. I don't know about the school zone, the schools, but their budget's also larger than ours, and their taxes are also larger than ours, and I'm not sure if they held any town hall meetings this year or not, but I think the city did. Not as many as we did, but
I don't think they had
they
any.
didn't?
I don't think so.
We were the only ones.
Just so everybody, Dr. Ledbetter, would you hold up the budget so everybody can get a flavor? If you have not seen.
Can you with one hand?
Yeah.
So there's half of it,
You can't do it.
and there's the other half.
So when we talk about the budget and we talk about reviewing the budget, this is not picking up 3 sheets of paper and saying, okay, how does it work out? Now, there are some summary sheets that the county manager has provided to us and everything, but in the end, when we talk about, as Commissioner Flowers-Taylor says, I want to move some things from one line item to another line item, we're talking about all those sheets of paper and saying, hey, I want to take this one off of page 373 and put it on to page 721. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, so everybody has a flavor for it, if you haven't seen the budget in action.
And for months, we've invited everyone who wants to come and take a look at it to come up. It is online. I know that we've printed physical copies for folks. We do ask you to pay for the printing, because that's not fair to the other taxpayers if you get 8 reams of paper for free. But at the same time, we've invited everyone. Please, we'll go over it line item by line, and we'll go into the minutia of the budget with you. And if you can find something that we should cut, that we overlooked, by all means, we would love those ideas.
And just as a quick correction, it's not online, unfortunately. It's not online for the public right now.
It's too big.
Yeah, we can't get it online, it won't.
But in no summaries either, right? There's no summaries that we can.
They can have this big one I've been carrying around.
Because I've had people
Anybody
too
want
also
to
wanted
have
us to kind of get a synopsis of it, and you don't have it.
They hand me mine. I work out with it. So, it's, again, the saying is, it takes a village, and we would love your input. All 5 of us, these are barely part-time positions up here, and our county manager is just a wizard with this kind of stuff. But if anybody has a better idea, hey, let's.
And we did hear a lot of ideas at
Yeah.
our town hall meetings.
That's why we did the town hall
Yeah,
meetings. That's
which was
exactly right.
Which was a really good thing. It was, we learned a lot.
I'm surprised the city didn't do any. We were the only ones who did town hall meetings. That's
So,
multiple town hall meetings. 5 town hall meetings? 6?
so my
7 town hall
questions, my questions are, what I kindly hear is that you're you're sounding okay with the budget, but people want some things moved around. What I would like to find out is the animal shelter spay-neuter program funded, and at what level?
$5,000.
Okay, so I think, I don't know if I emailed everybody, but I did email Steve about the fact that it's been almost a year since we were able to use the Ware Foundation, who was providing all of our spay-neuter services and chipping. We need to go back to helping to fund that so that we can clear the animal shelter out. We have a brand-new shelter, and we got animals in there, we can't send them out for adoption. So I was requesting that funding be increased to $10,000.
Are there animals in there that haven't?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
And how does 5 versus 10 compare to what we were before? What we were using where?
It depends on which veterinarian service we're able to use to spay and neuter, as to how much the cost is. So I'll be able to come back to you and let you know what that $10,000 will afford.
And hopefully, because I did speak with, I think I spoke with animal control, the director, code enforcement. We have an opportunity to partner with some local veterinarians who hopefully can do those spay neuters within this budget, but we can kind of exchange some stuff. But I feel certain that we have just completely dropped the ball on working toward spay and neuter. We were, up until 2 years ago, we were actually budgeting for that every year and giving people vouchers and assisting people in doing that. But we can't keep up, the population in animal shelter will not go down if we cannot have dogs ready for adoption. And we still have at least 40 of the animals that were, of the 95 that were brought in on a criminal case, they're still living there.
Yep.
So our normal population really can't even be brought in because we are still holding these other animals. So that was the one thing I wanted to request to be adjusted. I'm concerned that if the land bank funding is in as we've had it in the past year, and we have determined that going forward, there's going to be a need for something else, and I know we have to have an IGA with the city, but how do we budget for that? Because we can't get to a place and say, okay, this is what the IGA is gonna do, and the city has the money budgeted and we don't. We're saying we're gonna give them a year to get this legally turned around, and if it works, fine. If it doesn't, we're cutting the water off. And the other thing that I had a concern about is the Educational Prosperity Initiative, EPI. When it was started, it was, the city, the county, the school system, the community, the housing authority. Been going on about 10 years now. And the only organization that has been funding EPI for the garden and for whatever they're doing is the Housing Authority. I'm glad Bob showed up tonight. There's no program money going to there. If we're going to be partnering in their relationship and have a seat at the table making decisions, I don't think that we can ask anybody else to give them funding if we're not even doing it ourselves. They're being funded at 0 level right now, so whether that's $5,000, $3,000, they wouldn't submit anything to us because we've never given them money. So either we either support them or we don't. And those were the things that I wanted to say, Justin. I don't care if you take $5,000 off shoes. But these things, we've got a lot of money invested in that animal shelter, and it's not a hotel. We need them to roll in there, get fixed, and roll out.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody have a problem with that?
You'll let us know where those funds come, because you're gonna have to cut from somewhere,
Yes, ma'am.
so.
I will. I'll take that back to the staff and we'll understand exactly where we're gonna pull those funds from. And I'll have that ready for you Tuesday night.
So, one more thing then. since y'all are so amenable. You know me and you never agree about stuff, or hardly ever.
We
But,
most of the time.
Yeah, we're doing better. I've been praying a lot. But I kindly agree with you about the Rand Paul thing. In my brain, I'm saying, what does 1% of this look like? And if that's a 1% that we get to back out of a potential increase, I'm interested in that. And the reason I say that is because when we give the department the money, we don't know how they spend it. They spend it based on how they got
They
their
have to report
priority.
it, but we give it to.
So if they get 1% less, they just gonna get to do 1% less of something. But I'm interested to find out what that will look like in numbers, so it will give us a hedge in terms of maybe backing ourselves off if it gets to the place that we're really going to have to consider to raise the millage rate.
Can
Or
I add to that?
0.5% or something.
Back when I was in law school, I was a student government president at Georgia State, and the athletics department came to us and they said, we need an increase of the athletics fee, and we said, I don't think so. We're not doing that. And they said, well, if we don't get an increase, we're going to have to cut the baseball program. You don't want to be the SGA president that cut the baseball program. And I was like, man, I might have been born at night, but it wasn't last night. You're not going to close down your baseball program. Don't come at me with that. So the same argument, right? Hey, what would that be? I don't want people to come back and say, well, we'll just close Meals on Wheels or something ridiculous. Like,
No.
because, you're not going to, you know what I mean? Like, so come back and say, hey, this is realistically what we would do with our 1% cut. And don't make it, same thing they say in the feds. You cut $1,000 from somebody's budget in the feds, and they're like, we'll have to end Social Security. And you're like, you're not going to do that. Like, come on. So
Clients have paid
can we
rent.
get a,
We will go back and take a look at it one more time. Honestly, when Jenna and I sat down with each one of our departments, we did exactly that. And if you go through the budget, each one of the areas within the budget, this red pen actually went through and did just that.
It sounds like they want us to have blood instead of red ink, though.
Yeah, I do get that.
So
I
maybe
do.
that's where the other cut
And
need to come.
unfortunately, I think that's probably where some of our department heads felt like
That they were
we
hemorrhaging.
cutting.
Right.
Kudos to the sheriff for doing exactly that. He come in at just the absolute bare bones for his budget.
He has for the last 2 or 3
And he
years.
has. He comes in on a regular basis and just doesn't ask for a lot of money.
and raises a lot
And finds
independently.
money.
We appreciate that.
Yes, he
Finds
does.
money.
And on top of that, he provides a quality service for us.
Yeah.
But we still went through with a red pen, and I'm sure you got a little aggravated with me because I still cut some of the areas for him. But we did exactly that because that was the direction that I received from the Board of Commissioners at the retreat was don't come in with an elevated budget. The Consumer Price Index went up roughly 14.6% over the last 12 months, and our increase to the budget only went 10%. So we took that to heart, and if we do come back and use the Rand Paul example as a 1%, that would only be for the general fund. So that would only account for roughly
Right.
$700,000 worth of money. Yes, that's a lot of money, but if you spread it out over the course of the year for the services that we provide to our community, that would be cutting services.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I believe we don't
No.
want to do from the discussion that I've heard this evening.
I think it would behoove us, though, next Tuesday at least to say, hey, if we cut 1%, this is what we're looking at. And then we can kind of judge, like, oh, do we want, are we at the bone? You know what I'm saying? Like, because
Yeah,
if we
like you
cut
said.
more, then we're losing this and this and this. Do we want to lose those?
Yeah.
It's not gonna hurt to look.
You know what I mean?
I wanted to ask him something else. Oh, God. No, I forgot.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay, it'll come back.
Oh.
Can't do that mid-swig now.
I know it.
One of the comments I'd like to make as the chairman is how amazing the board is. The diversity of thought. If you listen to us tonight, One person says I would do A, and another person says I would do B, and another person says I would do C. We are all very diverse in our thought process of how we see the community, how we see our constituents, what we see we need to do, and that is a very, very good thing. If we walked all up in here and said, oh, we all see it exactly the same way, that's not a good thing in my opinion. We all need to say, these are the different things that we look at, these are the ways we look at it. Do we want to do something with pickleball? Do we want to do something with the fire? Do we want to do, those kinds of things make us all think about how we do that. It's a good thing for our community that the diversity we have in our board, and I appreciate it every day that we do things and we are able to talk about this in a respectful manner. All right,
Okay, my brain started back working.
okay, please.
About you said that in the budget, we have actually budgeted for everything like we did last year.
Yes, ma'am.
If at some point, because I know that we haven't made a decision on my question is passing this budget with those items for the solid waste, is that locked in cement, or are we saying we're not going to look at the bid that we got at all?
No, ma'am, that's not saying that at all. After staff has the opportunity to do a thorough review for the bids that came in for the request for proposal, we would come back to the board, make the presentation to the board. If the board made the decision to move forward with closing the recycled centers, we would do a budget amendment at that time and then move forward with reducing that service for.
Y'all gotta quit using that as an example now, come on now.
No. Because I'm trying to understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm still counting pennies. I remember the conversation in one of the emails where we were saying, okay, if and when we get a service, there will be a franchise-free fee. How do we roll that back to the residents? Well, if we roll it back, it's really a gratuity because we don't give it to the people in the city. But could it roll into the general fund? Because that would be money that we budgeted to have been spent.
That's correct,
If we
yes,
want
ma'am.
it to be zero neutral.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that if we approve it, that doesn't mean that we're locking ourselves into that as a choice.
Yes, ma'am. And from time to time throughout the year, we do come back to you with budget amendments. Typically, they're increasing in budget expenditures. And I'll give you an example. The chiller that was replaced at the CI just last year, we brought a budget amendment to the Board of Commissioners, and that was approved so that we could make that purchase. Likewise, if we had a budget amendment for reducing our inmate population at the CI by 84 like we did just a few weeks ago, that's typically a budget amendment. So we need to make sure that we're walking those journeys through, and Ms. Jenna and her staff, they just do a fabulous job at making sure that they keep the money straight.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So just so I understand, those budget amendments, does this need to be presented as before the second reading next week, or no? If we approve first and second reading as the budget as it is with the 121 million, you're saying later on after we've approved those amendments can come in for any changes?
That's correct,
Really?
they could.
Okay.
And they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I wanted folks to know, and I can't remember where I saw it, but you said that it was in here, that we're also going to be, our judge or our circuit is going to be taking over probation. So it will be in-house in the county. We're being told by the courts that it should be revenue neutral, meaning that the fines that people have to pay in court or on probation will pay for the service. But even though it's supposed to be revenue neutral, we still had to add that $1 million and something to our budget, which makes it look like we increased it for whatever.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
I want people to know that that's something new that wasn't there last year. So it's not that we spent so much money, it's those kinds of things that are
Accounting.
right.
I want to make sure everybody understands. We have not, tonight you heard us talk once again, on curbside pickup and recycling centers. We haven't made any decision There's nothing happening right now. All the stuff is with the county manager. Once he gets it all ready to go and the staff is done with it, they'll bring it to us. So make sure that nobody walks out or nobody thinks we're made a decision, we're doing anything with the recycling centers. That's not happening yet. We have asked the county manager to look at every opportunity, every place that we can save money. This is one of the places that he looked, and he brought it forth and is trying to get it all worked out so it'll know what it'll look like in our county. There are the request for proposal, which in layman's term usually means an estimate, is 51 pages to ask a trash company to pick up the stuff. So it is very voluminous, and what does it look like? And different people, different companies are providing information to us, and we have to make sure that we talk apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So please don't walk out thinking, hey, I heard them talking about it again. We talk about a lot of things, everything we can that saves us money tonight, okay?
Are we in a public hearing for this? We've been doing it so long, I don't know if this is a meeting.
We're still in the public.
Okay. Then I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to go out of public hearing. Do we gotta do that? To end a public hearing?
This is, we haven't had to do that, no.
Okay, all right.
All right, we're at number one, which, the new number one, so everybody understands, which was consider approval of the first reading of adoption of the FY 2024 budget ordinance. Commissioner Flowers Taylor?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like the motion to approve the budget with the requested changes, in addition with information back to us at what an additional 1% across the board decrease will look like before a second reading.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Now to make sure everybody understands where we are. We've got the budget. We've asked for some specific changes to be able to do that. The county manager is copying those down, and we'll do those. And on the 27th, we will vote on the final time. It takes the first reading, which is tonight, and then the final time. We have to be done by 1 July, or we just automatically revert to last year's budget, which is not what we want to do. So we have an opportunity on the 27th at 5 o'clock. I'm looking to make sure I've got head nods here. At 5 o'clock in this same room to come in, and if you have questions or you want to speak at that time, to be able to do that. Questions, you have an opportunity to speak. Let me be very specific about it. And then we will listen to those, and then we will vote on whether we're going to approve or disapprove the budget the second time. A lot of work for the staff to do as a result of tonight. I don't want to give anybody a misperception that we have not been working this hard. This is a culmination of weeks and weeks of thinking and talking to get to the point where we are tonight. All right, any more discussion? Everybody understands what we're doing? We have a motion to approve contingent upon. Everybody square with that? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. Motion to approve. Thank you. All right. New item number 2, A23-01, resolution to amend UDO Article 2, definition and terms used to replace Section 202 RRR, general definition, use non-conforming to amend UDO Article 2, definition of terms used to add Section 203 DD, housing definition, planned manufacturing home community non-conforming to amend UDO Article 4, general procedures to replace Section 403, continuance of non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. Director Reese. All right.
I hope, can you call us, do we need to be called into public hearing here?
You do. Motion to go into public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, motion, any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you. We're in public hearing now.
I assume we will do the staff report on all of these first before you take comment.
Could you move the mic closer?
I assume that we will do the staff report first before you take public comment if people have signed up to speak? Okay. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, tonight's agenda is loaded with a number of ordinances, and we begin with revisions to our code, zoning ordinance dealing with nonconforming uses. We have had a considerable problem with a number of issues arising with nonconforming uses and how to assess whether a nonconforming use has ceased. We've had them arise in old commercial buildings. What's the problem?
Just can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
We have had, is that better?
Oh, yeah, much better.
Yes, yes, thank
Okay,
you.
we have had these issues arise with old commercial buildings and, for example, AR zones. We've had these issues arise related to whether a business license should have issued for a business based upon whether it was nonconforming use. And the legal standard is whether the property owner intended to abandon a nonconforming use. We have also had specific issues arise with regard to the placement of new homes on vacant pads in nonconforming manufactured home parks and the procedures and the standards for the replacement of manufactured homes in nonconforming mobile home parks. So therefore, you have the ordinance in front of you. We're going to discuss it by bifurcating we're going to bifurcate the discussion first, and we're going to talk about the general nonconforming use provisions first, and then we will come back and discuss the manufactured home nonconforming uses. Ms. Morales has told me that you have a copy of version 6 of the ordinance on the dais at your position. And I would ask if you would turn to page 2 and look at the section 202, general definitions, where we redefine a nonconforming use. We are taking nonconforming uses and dividing them between lots, a nonconforming lot, a structure, and a nonconforming use of the land. We have also added into the definition that the nonconforming use is protected based upon the date of adoption of the ordinance or the date of adoption of an amendment to the zoning ordinance. If you turn now to page 3, the ordinance divides nonconforming provisions between nonconforming lots. A nonconforming lot is basically a lot of record in existence at the time of the adoption of the ordinance or amendment. And uses within the zoning district are allowed to continue on a nonconforming lot of record. We discuss and set out criteria for nonconforming uses, stating that a nonconforming use shall not be enlarged or increased. And we provide criteria for determining when a nonconforming use is abandoned. The purpose of these criteria in section B3 is to establish whether there is evidence to constitute an intent on the part of the property owner to abandon the nonconforming use. And we will look at such things as the condition of property, whether utilities are being provided, signage, and business licenses, or any other action or any other evidence that Mr. Reese decides constitutes evidence of the intention of the property owner or lessee to abandon the nonconforming use. On page 4 in subpart G, we identify uses of consisting of lots that are occupied by certain uses that are outside, and how those nonconforming uses would be handled. And then finally, in C, we identify nonconforming structures and identify what constitutes a nonconforming structure and that they cannot be enlarged or altered in a way that increases that nonconformity. In D, we discuss the replacement of a nonconforming use that is damaged or destroyed, and we identify that if a nonconforming structure is damaged or destroyed, other than by the deliberate action of the owner or occupant, the structure may be restored to the same or lesser size in the same location. Largely, this ordinance is the same as it was presented to the Planning Commission. However, they did request, and we had put in that the restoration of a damaged non-conforming structure had to be started or completed within 12 months. They felt like, in light of the experience we've had with the tornado, that more time was needed. So to replace a non-conforming structure, they required a letter of intent, excuse me, to be submitted within 12 months of the date of damage, and restoration to begin within 24 months. Now, again, the purpose of those is to give us greater guidance and to give Mr. Reese and his staff the ability to have specific criteria by which they can assess whether a non-conforming use is continued or should be continued. And if you want to do a comparison, compare the UDO provisions currently in Section 403 to this draft, and you will see these are greatly enhanced to give Mr. Reese's staff much greater authority and guidance. Now, let's go back and talk about the manufactured homes, the manufactured home communities. With the exception of only one manufactured home community in Spalding County, all of our manufactured home parks are non-conforming uses located in AR1 zones. And
All of them.
a number of issues have arisen regarding how, when, and what policies should apply when someone desires to replace a manufactured home in those non-conforming parks. If you'll go back to page 2, we add a definition in our housing definitions of a manufactured home community non-conforming. Manufactured home community is the term that we define for use of any manufactured home community, including those that are in R3, which is our zoning district to allow them. And the definition provides that a manufactured home community non-conforming is a lot used or intended as a residential area occupied by more than one manufactured home where the resident owns or rents the manufactured home and rents the manufactured home space, and which the home community is not located in the R3 zoning district. So this covers every manufactured home park except Southampton. All right. Now, let's talk about what the legal standard is for an expansion of manufactured home community. I have provided you all a summary of the events leading up to the hearing tonight, and in there I cited to you the case law which provides that, set by a case called Bugno versus Coweta County, which defines how a manufactured home park or community non-conforming can be expanded. And as I noted to you in that memo, the Georgia Court of Appeals, which is the last authoritative decision on this that I can find, allowed the manufactured home park to expand over the entire tract. However, as I noted, the issue did not resolve the question of what happens to compliance within the underlying zoning district. In other words, if there are criteria in the underlying zoning district, how does that play into the ability or the ability of the manufactured park to expand? So, after a number of events, we met with the owners of the manufactured home communities, and we have developed criteria for how manufactured home communities that are in a non-conforming zoning district can be dealt with. And if you would, turn to page 5. In these regulations, the number of manufactured home spaces in a manufactured home community non-conforming is limited to the number of spaces identified on the lot map file documenting each manufactured home community non-conforming located within Spalding County as of January 1st, 23, or the last filing for the manufactured home community, whichever occurred later, and shall not be increased. Eva, do they have copies of the maps on their dais? Okay. If you will look, I asked Ms. Morales to provide you with a copy of what we have received. We received from manufactured home community owners, where they are annually required to identify how their parks are laid out and what the status of their manufactured home lots are. You can see in the samples that she has given you, you see Ponderosa. This would have been the last one, I assume the last one filed first of this year. Pine Glen, which is on 2, Timber Creek, and toward the end you see A and B. We have required these for some years. I have also asked Ms. Morales to go back to see if there have been any changes in the number of lots that were proposed in these over that period of time, and generally the answer is no. So the number of lots in these has been consistent over time. So, if you have a lot shown on your community map, then that lot can have a manufactured home replaced on it. The other criteria, all manufactured homes must be installed in accordance with OCGA 82160. They must comply with the requirements of our code dealing with unfit buildings and structures. No manufactured home can be placed on an existing manufactured home space without a permit issued by the county, which shall include, and this is new because our goal here is to make the parks more attractive and to provide the people in those spaces with some place to live that has something more attractive to it than being in a tin can. So the layout and design of the manufactured home space, which is the lot the manufactured home sits on, will require the location of the manufactured home on the space. It will require parking space specifically delineated, because if you go through for that manufactured home pad, because if you go through most of the parks, cars are just all over the place. And then a landscape plan for each manufactured home space, which shall include at least one understory tree, that's a smaller tree, but a tree, and at least 3 shrubs along with an improved open space or deck, giving the occupant at least 100 square feet to be used outside for them and their guests.
I got a question about that.
Certainly.
Just grabbing the random one that I flipped to here, A and B mobile home park. It says new home lots in yellow and then home renos on blue. The new home lots, I'm assuming, are thus empty, vacant, ready for a new home to be placed on. In my reading, didn't we say if they were contiguous to each other, they would be combined? For example, like these two that are contiguous here would combine into one lot, and isn't that?
James, which one are you talking about? I've got the A and B part
Oh,
of the
the
map that you
bottom,
have.
so it's D68 and D58? Bottom left?
These are not,
You see what I'm
these are
saying?
not non-conforming lots. We do have a provision back in the general section of the ordinance which provides for a non-conforming lot to be combined. That's on page 3. For purposes of this, we're talking not about a legal separated tract, we're talking about mobile home pads. And the tract of record is the entire park. Are you following me?
I see what you're saying.
Now, we do have the requirement outside of a park where you have more than 2 or more vacant lots of record to be combined. But that, again, a mobile home pad is not a separated legal tract under our ordinance.
One more question when it comes to these little maps.
Same map?
This one is Pine Glen, and it just reminded me because it has wells marked on here. There's at least 2 wells that I see. Like, who runs those wells?
Well, we're about to talk about that.
Okay.
We're about to get there. In doing our research and in looking at how the condition of the parks are handled and such things as utilities, roads, and so forth, we really know very little about how utility service is being provided. For example, There have been complaints about water service at Pine Glen because they are on private wells. That private well is permitted as a public source by EPD, but we know very little about it. And we have very little ability to go in and regulate except as to finding out whether or not the water is contaminated. We also have the same issue related to sewer and septic. Again, some of these, and Ms. Wilson is here, we asked Ms. Wilson to be here so she could answer questions on this from the health department. Depending upon the age of the manufactured home that's placed there, we may have no information about the septic system. So, if you will look on page 6, and I suspect this will be the subject of further discussion.
Yeah, one of our requirements is they gotta mark that along with the parking and stuff too, right?
We are requiring that before the end of this year, not that Mr. Reese doesn't have enough to do, but that before the end of this year, the manufactured home community owner comes in to meet with him to go over these very issues so we know what residents are dealing with out there in terms of the ability to get water service. And again, as a result of complaints dealing with water pressure and water service, for example, Pine Glen has now connected to the county water system.
Backflow regulators.
Mr. Blackshear's community at Ponderosa is served by private wells, but has a backup connection to public water. Now, beyond that, we really don't know what they have. We don't know how water is supplied, and we cannot identify the location of septic tanks and so forth. So if you'll look on page 6, you will see that beginning at subpart 5 of that section, we are also requiring that they identify and designate a public area for recreation, at least 2,500 square feet in size. We recommend primarily for the use of a playground for resident children. Right now, if you go out there doing, in most parks, and there are children there, they're just kind of roaming around and there's not a place to go. And then in concert with Mr. Reese's office, we are having them come in and go through, the general conditions and structural integrity of the manufactured homes presently located within the mobile manufactured home community. And we have Mr. Dull's office here tonight because they are available to discuss complaints related to housing in these parks that y'all may or may not know about. B, the condition of roads. Compliance C, compliance with manufactured homes presently located within the manufactured home community non-conforming with HUD, manufactured home construction and safety standards. D, if it is not served by public water, give us a design, layout, and capacity of the source of potable water to serve the residents. If it's not served by public sanitary sewer, then the design, to the extent we can find out, of how septic systems are deployed. F, the quality and status and quality of utilities and supporting infrastructure to make certain they have a reasonable supply of electricity, natural gas, telecommunications, and streetlights and emergency lighting services. And then we're also having them come in and provide to us a copy of their rules and regulations. Most of the parks, we believe, have some shape, form, or fashion of rules governing what's supposed to happen in the park. And then if Mr. Reese and his staff decide there are deficiencies, to develop a plan to come in and get it corrected.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So some of these mobile home parks have been here like forever.
Decades.
So, I guess my question is, if you have them so close to each other and they're on individual septic tanks, there's no place to drain to. I mean,
Yeah.
how
Yeah, that's a
does that
problem.
work?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Ms. Wilson's here, and if you'd like for her to answer that. The bottom line is, most of them are non-conforming in the sense that many of them were placed before current regulations were enacted. And this is part of what we have to deal with, and this is the reason we know we have very little information about how these utility services are provided.
But like non-conforming, hey, you can only build a single wide, you can't build a double wide, that's the new thing. Like, but I've already got a double wide, so I get to keep it. Like, that's non-conforming. But like, if the non-conforming is a safety issue for the whole community, like, can't we come in and say, no, you have to change this?
Let's let Ms. Wilson address that.
Yes, please.
I mean, you know.
Ms. Wilson, if you'll state your name for the record, please.
I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm the environmental manager for, environmental health manager for the Department of Public Health.
Get that microphone right, just almost swallow it. Just
Can you
right.
hear me
There,
better?
there you go, there you go.
Can we do it again?
Yes,
Did you
sir.
hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Okay. Kelly Wilson, I am the Environmental Health County Manager for the Georgia Department of Public Health in Spalding County.
So Kelly, what happens when these septic systems that have been in there for maybe 30 years? I mean, usually when someone has to get a septic tank, you got to have a drain thing.
You do?
And I don't know how mobile homes do it. Do they have infrastructure where everything goes to one spot?
No, they do not, and we don't like to do that at all. There are some that may be combined. So to put it kind of in, I've been here 23 years, and to put it kind of the best way I know how, we've had to be creative in some instances. Most of them do have individual, and you just have to find a spot. Sometimes you may have to pump it away. You may have to cross the street with it. But our main goal is when one fails and there's a house sitting there, we have to get that sewage back underground so that it's safe. So really, we just do our very best to get it somewhere in there, and most of the time we can. I'll be honest. I know there's a couple, well, I can think of one in particular that has a large engineered system that has several combined. But we don't really like to do that because it's difficult to maintain.
I mean, I don't even know if people are approving those kinds of things these days, but I know that most of these places have been here for
Right.
a long time. So that would be my concern about any additional mobile
Yes,
homes
ma'am.
being able to come in, because
I have concerns about that too, and I've even stated to the owners at the last meeting that we were in, if we get to a situation where there's a home that needs a replacement and there is nowhere to go with it, there's nothing I can say besides you can't do it. You're gonna have to move these people to a different place and not use that lot. I haven't run into that yet, but I think that's why they did that large combined system. They had to hire an engineer, and it put, I'm wanting to say 2, 4, 6, 8, like 10 trailers on it. And that system has a replacement area, so if it fails, they can replace that one. But,
So, my other concern is that we've had complaints in the water authority from mobile home. If there's something happens, the water may go away for days. They call us wanting us to do something, but they're a private system. But we really can't, like the situation with the water system out at Old McDonough Road. That only happened because of the tornado came. But at these other places, there is the expectation that we have a responsibility to make sure that people who do live in mobile home parks have clean water, or they have water, or they're able to. And, other than them making a complaint to you, which you really can't do anything about it if they say the water's off.
no,
Yeah, I
my
don't like the
department
fact that
doesn't
we
handle
don't
water.
have any way that we can help people when something goes wrong with the utilities. And I don't know if there's anything in this non-conforming ordinance that addresses that.
Basically, Commissioner, what we've done is just get information so that you will at least know what's going on.
Okay.
The ability of the county to deal with water in a private system is going to be extremely limited. And, of course, as Kelly said, the presence of or problems with the presence of a septic tank being located at a certain place can prevent the use of that mobile home pad lot. So principally, the goal is to be able for you as a governing board to be able to know what's out there and how the service is being provided, so that at least if somebody does call up to complain because the water pressure's down, we know what's there.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any other questions for Kelly? Thank you.
Good.
So that pretty much concludes the discussion on the text and the explanation for how the ordinance has been developed. And it's ready for the public comment.
No, we have public comment. Mr. Jordan Blackshear is up first. If you would please step forward and state your name and your address for the record, please.
Jordan Blackshear, 654 Brook Circle, Griffin. And so I made some bullet points here. One thing that y'all should be aware of is that there are parks in the county that are zoned commercial. Newton said they're all in AR, the non-conforming ones, and that is untrue. There are a few that are commercial. One thing I think it's important to understand is that we never wanted to expand any of the parks. So all that we ever wanted to do was just to fill the empty lots that have always been there. Okay, and so pretty much all the parks in the county were developed in the 60s and 70s. So they have been there 50 years plus. So I'm pretty familiar with all of the parks in the county. There are 5 large ones, and then probably an additional 10 small ones. And I don't believe there is any park in the county that does not have a backup connection to public water. And I'm fairly certain of that. I own 14 mobile home parks throughout the state, and have probably replaced at least 50 septic tanks over the past 5 years. And I have never been in a situation where we could not get a replacement drain field in. We have replaced roughly 10 in the past 6 months in the Ponderosa, and we've worked closely with Kelly, and she's been really good to work with, and we're really appreciative of her. But so, we've gotten those 10 in with no problem, and we have about 10 more that we have permits to replace. And things can be tight at times, but it does seem, at least in the Ponderosa, there is room. Let me see. Really, I'm just here to answer any questions that y'all may have. I can't say that I'm in support of the text amendment to the ordinance, but I can say that in its current form, we would go along with it. Newton's really helped us to come a long way from the beginning, and I think in the end, he's been fair. All this started, and they basically said you can't put houses on these empty lots that are, pretty clearly grandfathered. They've been there forever. And so, we were looking at litigation over that. And it's not something that I want to bring up, but it's,
No, that's, he needs to keep talking.
Let him finish.
Yeah.
but, based on this, we would not be looking to go that route. It's tougher than what we would like, but we can stomach it, okay? I want to also say, really, I think the backdrop to this, kind of the context that it all needs to be set in, is that these parks are not perfect, okay? A lot of them have been in a decline for a long time, okay? At the ones that I own, which I own 4 in the county, I mean, we're doing major things, spending major money to revitalize them, right? And sort of bring the standard up. But I think the main thing to understand is there's a large portion of this county who has historically relied on manufactured housing in order to have a roof over their head. And there's been a lot of talk about inflation and just the general cost of living, and there's been a lot of talk in y'all's meetings just about raising the bar throughout the county, and that's something that I support. But if you make it too expensive, right, for the people that are really the poorest to live here, I mean, it really does hurt them. Every morning there's a school bus that pulls up at the motels on North Expressway, and I've seen it, and picks up children living in those motel rooms, and they just want a place to live. Not everybody can afford these $450,000 houses, like the ones going up on Tiemann Road. That is not an option for a lot of people. So before we kind of, put down the parks and, I mean, you got to kind of look at it both ways and kind of have a balancing there, because really they're an affordable housing treasure that needs to be protected. And if we just, a lot of what's happened, the parks have a budget too, right? And so about 10 years ago, the county basically told the people running the parks, you cannot fill these empty lots, right? Ponderosa was at 50% capacity after the tornado in 2011. And I'm not blaming the condition of the park before I purchased it on the county. There's a lot of factors there. But when you tell somebody your revenue is cut in half forever, it's hard to expect them, to make those expenditures, right, when they have nothing in the future to fund that with. So, I mean, allowing these lots to be filled, it does create money for the owner of the park to reinvest back into the park. Policy decisions, they have real impacts in the real world, and I think it's very important to be mindful of the incentives that you're creating at this level, because it does affect what happens in the field.
Can I ask a question about,
Sure.
because I'm in the insurance business. So is there particular insurance companies that actually insure mobile parks? And is it replacement cost if something does happen?
Well, and so that's a good question. And so the way that I run all of my parks is that the tenants actually own their homes, right? So I do not own the mobile homes. Like in the Ponderosa, there were some park-owned homes, and so we're in the process of transitioning those to the tenants, and sometimes that takes a little while, but we're just down to a handful, maybe 5 or so. But so basically, the park does not own the homes. It's a form of extremely affordable home ownership, so it's really a different model than an apartment complex completely. So no, we don't keep any insurance.
So is there a requirement for them to have insurance if something happens?
No, there's
Okay.
not. And that's something that we've looked at, but ultimately it's a hard thing to track. Are you keeping insurance on your house? And at the end of the day, it is their house. So, but we do have general liability in the park, right? But that's all that we carry. We don't have any structures.
Do mobile homes have to be registered every year? Is there a tag type requirement?
It's annual.
Yeah.
So when I go and get my registration, I have to show my car's insured. Like, is that same requirement? Maybe not through the owners, but what I'm saying, like.
Right. Well, so the reason you have to have your car insured is because if you hit somebody on the road, you would need to pay their damages. So
And a mobile home's not going to hit anybody. So.
Right. No, the mobile home's not going anywhere.
Right.
And I got.
But if you're owning a mobile home, if you're owning a mobile home, it catches on fire, and then someone's house is 10 feet away.
Well,
They're not insured. There's no protection for the people on both sides of them. And if it goes up in a tinder box, if I blow like this, everything over. So I guess I just don't
The
understand.
same thing could happen in a subdivision where
Right.
the homes are very close together and
Right.
insurance is not
Yeah.
required for homeowners that don't have a mortgage. If you
Ah.
don't have a mortage, you're not required to keep
That's
your
true.
property insured.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so just for context,
And
the
if you pick
typical,
20 down, then you don't have that either.
right, so the typical distance between these homes is probably 35 feet, I would say on average, 30 to 40 feet. There may be some about 25 feet, but actually, I believe that a lot of stick-built communities now are like 8 feet apart, or like 15.
Yeah.
So we're actually,
The one that y'all-
2 to 3 times more distance. Yeah. I don't know.
But they're insured, I'm pretty sure.
Right, but that insurance doesn't cover your neighbor's house, I don't
No.
think.
No, no.
So, and some people probably do carry insurance on their house. I mean, it's really not something that I track. We would certainly encourage them to do that. I mean, if their house burns down, they're gonna need a new house, but,
But I was just thinking, since we're talking, I mean, there's no requirement for replacement costs. So if anything did happen out there, then it just would be
Burn
a
up.
burn,
yeah, they would
the
lose their
spot.
house, which would be terrible.
Yes, it would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions? We have one more speaker.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Blackshear.
Thank y'all.
William Downs, if you would please step forward, state your name and your address for the record, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is William Downs, and I'm actually not from Spalding County, so my address is 934 Glenwood Avenue. I'm from Atlanta. I'm an attorney. I'm representing one of the park owners, Regal Griffin, which owns the A and B park. And I just want to echo, I'm by no means my mobile home park expert, and I defer to Mr. Blackshear on all that. My purpose in speaking today is just to, first of all, thank you all for listening to us, and thank the county for working through this process. Thank you to Newton for working with us on drafting this ordinance. Our goal, like Jordan was saying, is in order to improve these parks, the park owners are going to need to be able to infill them with homes on the existing lots in order to make these improvements. And so it's important that we all get on the same page about what is required to add a home to an existing pad. My concern, and I support, I support the ordinance to the extent that it does give, a roadmap for that. I did have some comments, what I submitted to Mr. Galloway prior to the planning meeting. I'm not sure if you have the benefit of those or not, but just briefly, my concern really was just when some of the language of the ordinance, in particular, E4, it says a permit. When it says a permit, I would just like some clarity on what sort of permit that is. Is it a building permit that the park owner would be applying for? Or is it some sort of, new permit? I think the ordinance should specify what sort of permit is going to be required to obtain. The other thing I would point out in 4A, where it says a layout and design, and then if you go to, 4A3, it talks about a landscape plan. We have proposed simply adding the term site plan, which would encompass all of that, I believe. I believe a site plan would encompass the layout and design of the space, as well as the landscaping to be added. So just, again, really just for purposes of clarifying. For, was it E4A4? We did have a question. Improved open space to us seemed, somewhat vague. If that means just grass or a yard, which I think is what is contemplated, just to have enough area for the residents and guests outside of the home. I think that would be a point of clarification, because improved open space, could also mean some sort of playground, which, a lot of these parks, is already noted elsewhere in the ordinance, there is a requirement for a playground. So that shouldn't be what's contemplated there. And then we had just proposed that, the 100 combined square feet, could be a deck or multiple decks, not just one deck necessarily. And then regarding section 5, I don't think the concept of this is necessarily controversial. It's just as a practical matter, what is the park owner, being asked to do? So the way I read this is they're being asked to have a meeting to review things. So are these are the things that are being reviewed, things that are being required to be prepared and filed of record, with the county? Or are they being reviewed and then the park owner, takes them back with them? Or do they leave them somehow with the county, like the site map is required to be, filed, of record every year? So, there is a site map. But the infrastructure needs, it is not clear to me, what is the ultimate goal there? And I understand certainly the need to be aware of what, infrastructure is in place, and to ensure that, the communities have, proper, fire safety, life safety means to get in and out of the park. But, some of these requirements, like, certainly the requirement that the rules and regulations, be provided. I think that gets a little bit far afield of what the county's intent
Okay,
should be
so
on this.
speaking of fire, are there fire hydrants out there?
So again, I mean,
Fire
I would
hydrants.
almost certainly imagine there are. I mean, again, Mr. Blackshear
almost
would
have
probably
to
be
have-
about,
you never know.
he's an
Wow.
actual,
One of these
he's
has
an
got
actual
wells,
park
so
owner.
I can't imagine it's gonna have.
Yeah,
Step to the mic,
Step up
please.
the mics, 'cause we got people watching online, so.
Fire hydrants, they're gonna be along the county road. When these parks were developed, there are not fire hydrants in the interior of the park. I don't think there's a single one. Southampton may have it, because that was sort of a higher quality development, but a fire hydrant requires a 6-inch water main, and so all of these parks have a 2-inch water main, and so they cannot support a fire hydrant inside the park. I mean, that's just the case, so.
So, this is a big part of my problem with us not doing this ordinance. And I say that because when someone wants to add a house into a neighborhood, if it's a stick-built house, we do ask them to bring us a site plan. We want to know where you're going to park cars. We have a requirement that there's got to be 25% brick or stucco on the house. You got to have a certain pitch on the roof. So my thing is that if someone is putting something new back, it should meet those criteria.
Yeah.
And if you're really planning to expand your park, or if there is an allowance for that, our goal is to make sure that the people who live in those parks have some amenities, not that they're just renting a spot there. And that is why we're asking for some open space. Not that you have to, in a non-conforming lot, maybe everybody's okay with what the amenities are. But if you want to add something outside of the lots of records, I think it's important for us to make sure that the water line that comes through, that the water is clean. We don't have any way to know that, hold on just a second, I'll let me finish. We don't have any way of knowing that. We don't know about fire protection. Clearly, our ordinance in the county says that hydrants need to be 500 feet apart. The problem out at North McDonald Road was that development went in so deep, it would burn up before we could get they do have a hydrant now. They're the only ones of the private water companies that do. But it's very important to have that fire protection. And I think that if you're allowed to add additional housing, then you need to meet the criteria to provide fire protection, not just for those people that's moving in new, but everybody in the community. So that, for me, I think that that's very important, that we're keeping up with whether or not we're providing fire safety, ability for emergency vehicles to come in, and the amenities that we require of anybody anywhere in the county that have a multi-group housing, and you want to add additional to it. So, yeah, now, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure. So I think really the distinction here to understand.
Jordan, step to the mic so we can.
So really the thing to understand is that no park owner in the county, and I can't speak for all the park owners, but I've got a pretty good idea of the situation. No one is trying to expand their park. So basically, expansion on septic is impossible. I mean, we could not expand these parks if we wanted to. The health department would not let us. I would not try. I would never ask. It's just not feasible. But so what the park is the lots. It's not the trailers in the park, right? So
That's only, at this particular lot, you're talking about A and B, because at others, there are definitely rental properties there. These,
all of the parks probably have trailers in them that are rented by a third-party person. I know that Ponderosa does. It does. But no, basically, I mean, they were developed in the 60s and 70s, and they were not developed with any of these amenities. I mean, they just don't have it, and it's not possible to put fire hydrants in the interior of the park. It is.
oh, it is. It's possible.
Well, it's.
It's
It
possible.
would be cost prohibitive.
It would be cost prohibitive, and it's really, I mean, anything is possible, right? I mean, you'd have to replumb the entire park with a 6-inch water main. No one's gonna do that. You know, and I want to improve the parks that I own as much as is possible, and I have done that, frankly. I've spent close to $1 million in the past 6 months on one of them. Okay, a $340,000 road. I mean, just major stuff that the county had been asking for probably for 20 years. And, you know, it's done. I mean, there's a lot more to do. But, you know, we have to be able to fill the lots, because if the business isn't viable, that investment cannot be made.
So the
And-
lots that you're talking about are lots of record,
Lots of record, yes, ma'am.
not green space that is going to be.
No, ma'am. That will not
Look,
occur. I can
Jordan,
confidently say
hold
it.
on a minute. They are not legal lots of record. They are separated out pads and spaces, which we refer to in our ordinance as mobile home space. And that is one of these lots. A mobile home space would be lot 121 in Ponderosa, but it is not a legal lot of record. It is a part of a legal lot of record that encompasses the entirety of the property on which the park's located, okay? These are not legal descriptions. These are not legal plats that are filed over in the clerk's office. These are simply the layouts that we've requested and that the owners of the parks have been giving us now for several years. I don't know exactly how long, but it delineates how many pads for mobile homes they have. Okay?
Newton is correct in that, you know, technically, legally, everything he said. But I guess what I was getting at, the county has a record of the lots. They're not lots of record, but the county has had these maps for a long time, and there's really no arguing that the pads are not there. They have lots of indications that, you know, that is a mobile home site. Power poles, water hookups, you know, some of the parks have a concrete pad that's meant to be like a patio area. So, I mean, it's very clear, parking spaces, you know, all sorts of things that indicate that it's been there for a long time.
If you will, at your leisure, look at Chapter 4 in Article of the Part 3, Public Safety General Code, not in the zoning ordinance. This sets out what we require with regard to construction standards for the manufactured homes, and it requires a report on manufactured home installations. That's 3-4006. Okay? And then 3-4008 provides for issuance of permits and decals. That's the annual registration like your car tag, but that's as far as we go. And then in 3-4009 are the annual reports, excuse me, that are required by manufactured home park owners, which requires identification of the pads, what we're calling the mobile home space, and the serial number of each and every manufactured home in the park, and an updated map for each park identifying lots there as of January 1st of such calendar year. This is the one for Jordan's Ponderosa. What you're seeing is now. And going forward, what we're saying is, you're limited to this. You can replace a home in it, you can put a new home on one of these, but you're limited to this number of lots.
Okay, more questions?
No. No, I didn't.
All right, do I have a motion for the first reading to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, Charles. Mr.
Oh, I'm
Reese
sorry.
wants to-
Withdrawn.
Well, I wanted to address one of the items you brought up, sir, in regards to open space. You had a question about open space, amenity areas and what have you. Mr. Galloway, just let me know if I'm incorrect here, but that was vague on purpose to give the owners the leeway, freedom just to figure it out. Because this draft could have gone in further detail, saying, hey, we need 20% this, 20% that, this is what we want it to look like. But that was vague on purpose to give you all that give the owners that freedom to do what encompasses open space or amenity area.
Okay.
And I might add another thing, William, where we discussed the improved open space or deck. Now, this is based largely on Ponderosa, but in most places, Ponderosa, for example, does have a concrete pad that adjoins the location for where the manufactured home would go, so that people could come out there, sit, have a table with umbrella, have a grill or something. That would qualify, or a deck that allows them at least some space to come out, get out of the house and sit within their area and not just be on the ground. So that's what we're referring to.
So improved open space can
Correct.
mean
It could
something
mean
like
the
a
pads-
concrete
A porch.
patio with no
Correct.
rails or a wooden deck,
Correct.
but it doesn't mean a yard.
Build a park.
No, it does not doesn't mean a yard. Now, somebody want to go out and plant them a landscape yard in front of the home on Jordan's lot that's in front of their home that they own, have at it.
Okay, anything else, anybody? All right.
Are there any conditions that we, like, sometimes when we pass these things, I know this is an ordinance change, but there's nothing that we need other than passing this,
No, there are no conditions like you would place on zoning, no.
just making sure.
It is first reading.
All right, do I have a motion for first reading?
Motion to approve it first reading.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second, any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand.
Who seconded?
All right.
Ryan.
Ryan.
Thanks.
5-0. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, Bob.
Bye.
I would like
Bye,
to say
Bob.
we appreciate Kelly and Bob and his staff being here in case y'all have.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you,
Kelly,
Kelly.
too. Awesome.
All right. Old item number 2. A23-02, ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of Spalding County, Georgia, Article 21, Sensitive Land Watershed Protection District, Section 2103, definition to amend subsection E to define perennial streams, to amend Section 2106, uses exempt from S2 criteria, to add subsection E to identify master plan development. Mr. Reese?
Yes, if I may start.
Okay.
This-
This is just an update due to to state change.
Yes,
That's
sir.
correct.
Yes, sir. Before I defer to Mr. Galloway, the whole point of all of this is to make sure that the county is in compliance with the EPD. And we've been working very closely with Rebecca Lindsay, our consultant, with Newton and the rest of the staff to ensure that we're meeting those requirements. So far, the county has made tremendous strides in doing so. We will continue to come to you all as updates are necessary for you all to approve. But tonight is definitely a big step in getting us in further compliance with the EPD.
And according to Ms. Lindsay, she's also informed us that the EPD is going through their rereading of these changes.
Yes.
We will most likely need to come back to you again in about 6 months for additional changes, but these ordinances that we're presenting to you this evening are to make us in compliance today. So
Okay.
they are much needed.
All right, do I have a motion to,
Motion to approve item, amendment A-23-02.
all right, this is first reading. Do I have a second? James, you second.
He
Okay.
seconded.
Any discussion?
Yeah, are there any actual substantive changes? We're bringing the language in line, right?
Well,
It
the
doesn't
one-
actually change.
Commissioner, the
happens
one
on
that you have right now, which is the S2 revision, is tied to an EPD DNR regulation change that redefined perennial stream and set buffers differently. And it wound up impacting development that had already been approved in places like Sun City.
Correct.
So that's the reason you have the definition of the stream, which is EPDs, and then we did do an exemption provision for a master plan development that's already been permitted,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, the city just sent me hey, you're now in a flood zone. And I went, did my house get lower? Like, what are you talking about?
Excuse me. All right, any more discussion? We're gonna have 2 or 3 of these in a row, so let's get ready. All right, any more? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, thank you. Old item number 3,
Now I gotta buy flood insurance.
A23-03, ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of Spalding County, Georgia, Article 4, General Procedure, Section 411, Variances, Section 413, Special Exception, Section 413A through G, H through N, Section 414, amendments to comply with the requirements of the House Bill 1405 as codified in the Georgia Zoning Procedures Law, OCGA 3666-1. Do I have a motion to approve the first reading?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, if there were some typographical errors in here, is this the time to address those? And I actually had some questions as well.
Yeah, I do too, but I was just waiting till they got a second.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second it, please go.
Okay, thank you. County Attorney.
Well, on the, let's see, I'm looking at number, it's Article 4, Section 411, variances. Number 8, where it says granting the variance shall not be based on consideration of any existing non-conforming use. I'm assuming that is part of the new law because that is something that we do all the time.
Stephanie, that's in our current standards for granting a variance.
Okay, so it's something that we do all the time.
And I do want to say one thing on this. These are major revisions to zoning procedures law where you will be given authority over variances related to rezonings and special exception developments,
That's surely what we need.
okay? Now,
I believe that's what you asked for, Mr.
Yes, this is exactly what we, this is
now,
big.
if you will look so that you'll see how it's going to work, and again, this brings us into compliance with House Bill 1405, we hope. And by the way, Stephanie, if I've got typos in here, you just let me know, because I've seen so many ordinances and pieces of paper over the past month it's been. But anyway, there will be two types of variances. One will be a standard variance where somebody just wants a setback change so they can build a porch on their house in Sun City. That's gonna go to the Board of Appeals still. But if that variance is required with a concurrent rezoning or special exception application, then that's going to come to you pursuant to your standard rezoning procedures. Okay? So, and the other thing is, the Board of Appeals coming out of this really will have authority only over two things: a variance and an appeal from Mr. Reese's decisions. Okay? Which is standard and which they have had since the zoning ordinance developed. Now, there is some change related to special exceptions because the act decided to throw a new term in called a special use, and then made a distinction between special use and special exception. And you will see on page 5 under our definitions, a special exception includes special use permit, conditional use, and conditional use permit. And Mr. Reese and I have reviewed this and feel that should be treated as a legislative act that comes to you pursuant to a hearing process as if it were an amendment.
Oh, good.
Okay? Now, we will come back to you with an ordinance to finish this out, but it's not required for compliance with how we deal with special exceptions, subdivisions, and manufactured home placement in residential zoning districts. Those still have to come back, but this gets us into compliance with House Bill 1405.
Newton, I saw in some places, but not in every place, there was notice to abutting landowners. Should that be across the board or just in certain situations?
Well, Stephanie, there's nothing specifically regarding notice to abutting landowners in 1405.
I think it was in the next one.
So what I did was just carried forward the procedures we had for notice from the old provisions.
And the same thing with the legal notices, the publications, we don't specify how, when, I mean, we specify when, but not exactly where in the newspaper, so it could be in the legal notices?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, there are provisions in 1405 specifically for actions that play with a zoning change from single-family to multifamily that require special notice, large notice.
Banner
in the
ads
paper,
as
correct.
opposed to legal notices.
But we've taken the position that's governed by the statute, and we would have to comply with that anyway, so it's not in the code. It's not in our code.
And the application for amendment to the official zoning map, the criteria for approval, I didn't see the comp plan included in that, and maybe it is and I just missed it, but isn't that something that they should look at?
Stephanie, again, we didn't play with the factors that are currently in the ordinance, but if you will look at section 3 on page 8, If Mr. Reese gets an application in that's not consistent with the comp plan, then it requires an action to amend the comp plan like we've
Gotcha.
been doing. So, again, the goal was to try to have as much of our existing text carry forward and still comply with 1405 and do what we needed to do.
Okay, so some of these are nitpicky, and I apologize for that. So the hearings to be held in the Spalding County Courthouse Annex, I think we should add "or such other meeting place as designated by the Board of Commissioners," just because the meetings might not always be here.
Okay? Give me a,
What page, Stephanie?
So it's page 51 in your agenda packet, but
Girl,
I'm going to amend my motion to include that. Who seconded, Ryan?
She did.
Ryan, you second.
Gwen seconded.
I said,
Oh, you
It
seconded.
is-
Peter, amend your second. to-
number
I'm not
5,
second.
procedures before the Board of Commissioners. It is I to 1.
okay, no problem.
And then I to A, where you're talking about the people that are to be heard, could we just say pursuant to the Board of Commissioners rules for public comment? Because personal remarks will not be tolerated is kind of vague. Most remarks are going to be personal.
It's true for us.
Stephanie, where are you?
That is,
Page 51, I to A.
yes.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let me get to let me get to my copy from the agenda. Hold on. I don't have the agenda pages on mine. I'm sorry, I brought the original. Stephanie, just mark them on there.
I will. I'll send it to you.
And we'll have it done so you can have this by Monday for
Okay.
BOC. What else?
A couple of minor typos, but I'll just send those to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else have any discussion points? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
And again,
5-0.
We amended to include Stephanie.
yeah, we amended our,
And then she amended her second.
Did you all get
our
that?
motion
Or-
to
or
include Stephanie's changes.
Or, yeah, or re-seconded or however.
And I'm going to try to get this at the next time we do it on the consent agenda, give everybody a heads up so we can just move through. All right. The old
Oh,
item
yeah,
number
second
5,
was-
the Spalding County Board of Commissioners to allow public comment at
Oh,
this
yeah,
time.
We moved, you actually moved that.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry, that's right.
It's number 4, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You do have one more.
On number 4.
Yeah, the old number 4.
I knew there was one more. Thank you. A 2304, ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of Spalding County, Georgia, to amend Appendix D, Spalding County Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Ordinance by replacement in its entirety.
What we are doing in order to make it more flexible in our code, we are removing the soil erosion ordinance from being part of the zoning ordinance to being part of the code so that it can be changed as we get new directives from DNR and EPD without having to comply with zoning procedures law. And it's not really it's not a regulation that affects zoning, and it permits us to move it into the code and out of the zoning ordinance. So what you're doing in this ordinance is deleting Appendix D, and you're about to approve the transfer of that ordinance to the land development portion of the general code as Chapter 3.
Do I have a motion to approve? We're just moving from one place to
Yes,
another.
yes, you do
This
have
is-
a motion.
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. Thank you. All right, new business. Old item number 2.
Can you come up with
Mr.
your,
Oh,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Motion to come
Mr.
out.
Chairman, can we have Ms. Lindsay, who is our EPD consultant, on Zoom? Correct, Eva? Okay. And she's available to discuss the illicit discharge ordinance and the new soil erosion ordinance. And as Mr. Reese said, these are required to bring Spalding County into compliance with EPD regulations. And we ask her to be available, so if you had any questions, she would be able to answer them. There is not a really original thought in this on either of these. Ms. Lindsay gave us, largely gave us the text, which is based upon EPD regs and standards. So I will defer to her on comments on the text of the ordinance.
Okay, before we do that, did we get a close on the public hearing?
No.
All right.
No.
Do I have any more discussion? We've got the motion, right?
I did not,
I will make a motion to come out of public hearing.
Yeah, second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We're out of public hearing. Thank you.
And because these are not part of the zoning ordinance, a public hearing is not required. This is like every other ordinance you have.
correct.
All right.
You're number 2.
Thank you. Old item number 2, A 2305, ordinance to amend the general code of Spalding County, Georgia to amend Chapter 4 illicit discharge and connection stormwater ordinance. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I got a question.
Yes.
Okay, so this illicit discharge, and all of this related to stormwater runoff, we don't have a stormwater program. So I know we have a stormwater ordinance because when people build stuff, we have to get a retention pond. But to me, it kind of makes me think that this says we have a stormwater program. We don't. And I mean stormwater in the sense of what the city of Griffin has. I mean, they charge a fee for it.
Good evening.
They
Can
do
you
some
hear me
different
okay?
stuff.
This is Rebecca Lindsay.
Who's calling me? Who's talking?
It's Rebecca.
Oh, I thought it was God.
Okay.
To leave here.
Okay.
Ms. Lindsay, come ahead.
I hear many voices, so hopefully you can hear me clearly. And so the county does actually have a stormwater utility. So there's it's called an MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. So that's acronym MS4. And so you operate that stormwater utility. And in conjunction with that, you are a local issuing authority, which means that you have the authority to approve land development plans. So those kind of go hand in hand. They're different, but they're related. So these ordinances emanate out of those two regulatory authorities. So the illicit discharge ordinance is related to protecting your stormwater system, which is all of your culverts and everything that receives rainwater, stormwater discharge, and ultimately makes its way to the state waters, which is within your defined urbanized area. So that is your permitted area. You have a permit for that, and Spalding County is responsible for complying with that permit. That's a blanket federal permit. And there's a permit number for that the county is responsible for complying with. So that is a stormwater program. And the illicit discharge ordinance regulates anything that's not stormwater, keeping that out of the MS4. So that could be sediment, it could be oils or any kind of contaminant of any nature that could get into storm sewer infrastructure and ultimately make its way to state waters. That's the purpose of the illicit discharge ordinance. The sediment erosion pollution control ordinance is separate, kind of a distinct matter, and it relates more to your responsibility as a county as a local issuing authority for regulating development and erosion and pollution control associated with new developments and runoff, again, into your jurisdiction as a whole.
Okay,
Okay. All
I
right.
get it.
Everybody got square on this? All right, we have,
Motion in a second.
all right.
Bless you,
God
bless you,
God
bless you.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. All right, I think Ms. Lindsay has already covered the second one. So Alpha, the old number 3, Alpha 2306, ordinance to amend the general code of Spalding County, Georgia, to amend Appendix D, Spalding County Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Ordinance, and add it to the general ordinance. We're moving from one to the other.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend the ordinance A-23-06.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion carries. Old item number 4, consider approval of the 2023 owner questionnaire and disclosure environmental for the Griffin Housing Authority as part of the sale of the property. Dr. Ledbetter.
I turn it over to the county attorney.
Mr. Chairman, this is for the park at Rosenwald Development. We completed the same owner questionnaire in 2022, but given the delay in the development, we need to complete that questionnaire again for the engineers. So it's been completed, it's just a matter of approval for you to sign off on it. Nothing had changed from last year.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion carries. Thank you. Old item number 5, consider approval of the contract with C.W. Matthews Contracting Company Incorporated in the amount of $7,397,700 for the 2023 T-Splosh resurfacing Phase 2 project. Dr. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item was put out to bid on 2 separate occasions. There were no respondents to the initial request for the bids. Second request was, second RFP was actually submitted, was advertised properly, and C.W. Matthews was the only contractor who submitted a bid during the second bidding process. I did have conversations with both the Georgia Department of Community Affairs and with Georgia Department of Transportation, and both of them have green-lighted the sole source provider for this project. And you have before you a copy of the detailed bid results for your review. Paragon Consulting and staff have recommended the approval of the contract in the amount of $6,917,900 for the resurfacing under the T-Splosh projects to account for all of the roads that are currently set for year 2 resurfacing. And then additionally, the fire department location on Carver Road, the fire station, the back pad is in such disrepair that it has converted from any form of asphalt to basically gravel. There is money that was set aside in last year's budget for this repair, and we are utilizing the mobbing of C.W. Matthews to do our resurfacing to receive a discount for the purchase and full depth reclamation of that back parking area in the amount of $469,800. One of the things that I would call your attention to for the request for proposal in the bid that was presented for us for T-Splosh this year, although this is a sole source provider, the bid amount that came in was less than what we paid last year for mile. So the bid came in very favorable again this year. We anticipated that the cost for this year's project would be approximately $8 million, and the total resurfacing contract is coming in at $6.917 million. So very pleased that we've gotten this level of engagement from C.W. Matthews.
Wonderful.
Will that not allow us to
Give me a list.
begin year 3 projects?
So
Good question.
the short answer to the question is yes. The longer answer is, once this bid is approved this evening, I have had the conversation with Mr. Upson from Paragon. We will immediately move into bidding out year 3 work. C.W. Matthews has asked that we extend the contract for a 12-month period for resurfacing, so that they've got time between now and next May to complete the work. So bringing back next year's work early may actually incentivize them to do a little extra this year for repaving some of the road work that we've got already scheduled for year 3.
And the contract is, we're paying this much and you are doing this many miles.
That's
and if there's
correct.
overages, that's on them.
That is correct.
That's Like, right?
Okay,
We
firm
talked about-
fix.
It's 20, and it's a little over 23 miles of road for year 2, which will take us to almost the 50-mile mark.
So this paper that we got here from Brian, and maybe this is just wrong, looks like we are spending T-Splosh money for the fire station paving.
Yeah, we are not spending T-Splosh money for the fire station. The Carver Road Fire Station full-depth reclamation and paving, items 21 through 28, they are listed as a separate line item, and it will not be removed from T-Splosh.
Okay, but where is that funding coming from? Fire department?
It is coming from the fire department, yes, ma'am.
We had it last
Just-
It was budgeted, yes, ma'am.
Okay, just wanna make sure.
Yep.
That repaving, is it going to, so the reason it broke before was it was just, they just threw some asphalt out. I mean, not, I'm saying that poorly, but it obviously wasn't designed to handle the weight of a fully loaded fire truck. Are they doing that this time so that we're not gonna come back 10 years from now and it's gonna be gravel again? You know what I
Yes,
mean?
they
Yeah.
are doing a full-depth reclamation for super paving in the back lot for those heavy pieces of equipment. That parking lot, I did have a conversation with Chief Polk, and he indicated that he could not remember that parking lot ever being repaired.
I
It's time.
walked it, yes, it's bad, it's bad. All right, do we have a motion?
You do not.
Can I have a motion to approve? All right, I have a motion, do I have a second? I have a motion and a second, any more discussion?
Who was the second?
Gwen.
Gwen Flowers Taylor.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion carries. All right, item G, executive session. Consider request from the county attorney to conduct executive session to update the Board of Commissioners on actions taken regarding current property owned by Spalding County, to discuss the future acquisition of real estate as provided by OCGA 501434, and to discuss or deliberate on the appointment, employment, compensation, hiring, disciplinary action, or dismissal, or periodic evaluation or rating of a county officer or employee as provided in OCGA 501436. Do I have a motion to go into?
Mr. Chairman, motion to go into closed session to discuss all of that you just said.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We're adjourned. We will return back after the,
Before y'all leave, I do want to point out that the ordinances that you approved tonight need to be on your Monday agenda.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Tuesday, 5 o'clock, just so everybody knows. Tuesday, 5 o'clock. All right,
No, ma'am.
good, thank you.
Are we still on air here? Are we still on air?
Yes, we're still on there.
closed session.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0.
Motion.
No, we gotta do
Issue.
one thing. Stephanie, help me out with this motion. Motion to,
A motion to donate the easement area for the
Airport.
movement of utility lines by Georgia Power, Georgia Transmission in favor of the Griffin Spalding Airport Authority.
I second.
so moved.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Anybody got anything else that they need to do? All right, a motion to adjourn. I have a second. Do I have a-
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
You got that, Steve, right?
I do.
Good night.
Bye-bye, saying goodbye.
What I need to take home with me.
Mike?
I had to let my dog out.
So, we got a doggy. I'm wild.